It's an honor to come and speak here today. And it's been a very uplifting event to have President Clinton and so many great speakers here. And the only thing I would want to end the day with is that it's not as bad as it seems. I'm going to call the bottom. I think the elevator hit the bottom, and I'm very optimistic. I think that at our heart, we are innovators. Our country is a startup. And I'm seeing real good signs that we're going to get our way out of this. You know, as a country, we are investing so much money in new energy technologies. There really is deliverable one for our economy. If we can get less dependent on someone else's natural resource and take control of it our own, that money will stay with us, and we'll be able to do a lot of the programs that have been discussed. As we pull out of some wars and military efforts outside of our borders, that also will free up resources. And what I'm seeing in technology, we take for granted the pace of innovation that's made this social network, that's made companies like Facebook and Twitter and the Groupons of the world and the Living Socials of the world be able to come to fore and really create value for so many people. So I'm feeling optimistic. I think we will now start to apply the same kind of innovation to education. We all want Georgetown to be the exemplar for being the innovator, the convener of this kind of thinking. If I had more time, my address would literally be around why can't we as a society be more like Georgetown? Because I do think that the Jesuit ideal of developing that whole person really plays true for our businesses and our economy and our political systems. It was noted that I was a scholarship student here. When I came to Georgetown, Georgetown was not a need-blind institution. I graduated with a lot of college debt. I understand the power of education. I was the first individual in my family to go to college. My dad didn't even finish high school. He was a Greek immigrant. And it's why my giving to Georgetown, which is diverse to many programs, but it's mostly centered on scholarship. I think the 1789 initiative is really, really important. And I also think educating within the city, there's so much to do in the city of Washington, D.C. Some of the programs here that we're trying to get Ward 7 and Ward 8, and the most powerful city in the world, the city that can pump trillions of dollars in our economy, has a 38% graduation rate of high school students right around the street. And I'd really love a call to arms of Georgetown students to reach out and volunteer to try to help these students, high school students, right in their own community. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is how I was programmed when I came to school and the reckoning that I had and how it changed me and how I think that I became more the Georgetown ideal after my reckoning than when I graduated. I was programmed to go to college. My mom and dad thought that that was the American dream, that the generation after, second generation, would do better than the previous generation. And the narrative went something like, if you work really hard and you go to a good college, you'll get good grades. And if you get good grades, you'll get a good job. And if you get a good job, you'll make a lot of money. And if you make a lot of money, you'll be successful. End stop. And for those of you who know a little bit of my story, I graduated top of my class in 1977. 3 years later, I started my first company. It was a software publishing company, and raised some venture capital, and I sold it. I made $60 million when I was 26 years old. I declared victory. I won. My mom and dad were so proud. Father Durkin was so proud of me. And then I got on the wrong airplane. And if you have the opportunity to read my book, you'll see that I was on a plane, and it's a very humbling experience. Plane was going down, lost its flaps and its landing gear, and basically they prepare you for 35 minutes by teaching you how to brace. And during those 35 minutes, it became very clarifying that a lot of the things that I was programmed for, what I would accumulate, were none of the things that I would miss. And people around me were weeping and crying and stressful. And so I started praying. With all be blunt, it felt inauthentic because I hadn't prayed regularly around that time in my life. And all I could think of was praying, and if God was listening, saying, "Oh, sure, now you need me." And so I reverted to type. I was a business person, so I tried to cut a deal. And the best soundbite that I could come up with was, "Please, I don't want to die. Let me get through this, and I'll leave more than I take." That was the deal. And obviously I made it through. And the next weekend, when I sat down to take stock, I had no tools to fall back on to say, well, what does that mean? How will I live this life without regret? How will I leave more than I take? How will I try to embody a lot of what Father Durkin had been whispering and teaching for the years that he was my mentor here at the school? So the first thing I did was try to internalize that I had had a reckoning and realize that reckonings come in all shapes and sizes, but they're universal. Everyone will have their heart broken. Everyone will have a financial setback. Everyone will have a health scare. Everyone will lose someone that they love. And I started to see that businesses and economies were the same way. That businesses were like people, enterprises were like people, and they would have reckonings. And so the first thing I did was try to learn from the reckoning, and I, in a very feeble attempt, made a list of the 101 things to do before I die. You can go to my blog, you can go to the web, and I felt that if you can't metric and measure, you really don't know how you're doing. And in businesses, we do the same thing. We end up going and having turnarounds or startups, and you have to make your list of the things that you want to achieve. And so from 1984 to the present, I've been checking off these things on my list. Buy a sports team, win a championship. Haven't won a championship yet. Start a company, take it public, change someone's life via a charity. Do something dramatic at Georgetown to show how much I love the school, on and on and on. And as I started to get through that, I got married, I had children, and with my son, I went to the Library of Congress on a field trip. I encourage you to go to the Library of Congress. They have the Declaration of Independence. Someone drafted the first draft of the Declaration of Independence and sent it out to other people to edit. Ben Franklin wrote, "I wouldn't say it this way. Are you daft? What were you thinking?" And it edited. They have every red line version. And the only line that wasn't edited was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Happiness. And I read that, and I felt terrible. So I wanted to be a good role model to my son. And I realized my mom and dad had never once said to me, your goal, your journey is to be happy. Your goal was to be successful. And that really bothered me. It pained me because religions aren't about success. Finding higher callings aren't about success. If you spend time with the Dalai Lama, he doesn't talk about success. It's about happiness and self-actualization and fulfillment and being in service to others. So I said, I'm now going to spend my time and this second part of my life trying to break the code on what's the science around happiness. And I think I'm there. I think I've found the 5 common traits that all happy people share and all happy organizations share, successful organizations. And there's a direct corollary between building value from happy companies. In fact, I'm creating a happiness index for corporations and investing in them and creating my portfolio around happy companies. And so through all this research, all the studies that I've been involved with, all of the reading that I've done, all of the paneling of 400,000 homes to figure out what makes for happiness, it really boils down very simply. And happiness can be defined by the quality of the relationships that you have with husbands and wives and children and friends and workers. Happy people live longer lives. Their sex lives are better. Their proclivity to work productively is greatly increased. And it's fascinating that I've now started to believe very much so that if you're happy, you can be successful. But we see every day in the headlines that if you're successful, it doesn't mean you'll be happy. So the 5 traits of happy people and happy companies are thus. 1, you are an active participant in multiple communities of interest. Sounds simple, that you're here on a Friday night at 6:15 as an alum, as a student, says you're connected to some community of interest. Makes sense. We're social animals. I was watching CNN the other day, The Diary of a Serial Murderer. This guy got caught. He was a bad man. And they interviewed the neighbors, and what did the neighbors say? He was a quiet man. He stayed by himself all the time. If you do something bad, what's your punishment? Solitary confinement. Look at the successful companies right now. Most successful product I ever launched in my career at AOL was AIM. It's the first virally marketed communications product. Twitter is a descendant from AIM. We had a feature in AIM called status messaging. That's what Twitter is. AIM was all about managing your communities of interest. What is Facebook about? Managing your communities of interest. Both building great value. Starbucks, I'm friends with Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks. Howard, what business are you in? I'm in the neighborhood community business. I provide services like wireless, you can watch movies. If you don't have a job, you can put on your suit, you can go to Starbucks and do your resumes. And if you have a cup of coffee, that would be terrific. Multiple communities of interest. Number 2, high levels of self-expression. We want to be heard. There's a reason there's 177 million active monthly bloggers. I blog every day at tedstake.com. I've been married almost 25 years. I love my wife. Infrequently do we get in arguments. When we do, the core scene that's returned, what does she say to me? You're not listening to me. Businesses that activate self-expression from their employees. Look at my Washington Capitals. best record in the league last 3 years, sold out every game. Come to a game. You'll see people celebrating wearing president's masks, red prophylactics. Don't know what that means. Dressed as an astronaut, the capstronaut. The more we've activated the blogosphere, the more we've allowed people to self-express, the more successful we've become. Just go to Google every day. Every day there's some new little doodle around the Google logo. That's the environment that we're living in. Go to Facebook. Billions and billions of photos. People self-expressing. People changing the definition of what privacy is. Wanting to share everything that they're doing. I have one friend on Twitter. I sent him an email and said, I'm out. I was like, I'm up. I'm going to the bathroom. Coffee's good. Traffic. Tweet like, said, you are the most boring person. You might be self-expressing, but I'm out. So high levels of self-expression. If you're an accountant, go dancing. If you're a liberal arts major, study architecture. Do something to balance. Do something to help you to self-express. I think universities are great ways to activate and teach young adults how to self-express. That's what liberal arts is all about. When I did my senior thesis in 1976, proving Ernest Hemingway wrote The Old Man and the Sea in 1934 instead of 1950, Father Durkin helped me. It was one computer on campus. And we did this great work with a linguistics major, and I worked with the one computer, and I remember Father Durkin saying, this is the first time that technology and liberal arts have come together in an academic paper. Fast forward 30 years, and 2 years ago, Steve Jobs was asked, why is Apple Computer the world's most valuable company? And he said, Apple is where liberal arts and technology intersect. Really, really interesting on self-expression. Third, empathy. Tuning up your personal empathy, which I think Georgetown is all about, and its feeling of giving back and being able to walk a mile in other people's shoes. Empathy is the human emotion that most keeps us working, most keeps us functioning. There's a basic human unspoken negotiation about how we're supposed to treat one another. Higher levels of empathy make for our great political leaders. We just opened the Martin Luther King Memorial a couple of weeks ago down the street. I went to the opening. One of my companies has a bunch of movies about Martin Luther King. And when you listen to his speech, you listen to his actions, see his actions, they're all filled with empathy. I saw this in a personal moment 1 year ago when I was buying the rest of the Washington Wizards. I was interviewed by the Washington Post, and they said, what are you going to do differently now that you own the basketball team and the building? And I spewed stream of consciousness, and one of the things I said, I'm going to make the building cleaner and more world-class. And as soon as I said that, I felt awful because I had never met with our cleaning crew. So I ran into the office, I called the people who run the cleaning staff in, and I apologized. And I said, I have no idea what your job is all about. I want to help you clean the building. I want to see what it's like. And the head kind of went like this and said, great, there's a Washington Mystics game. I own the WNBA team too, and it's mostly women who attend the games, and you can clean the women's bathroom, and then you can work on the picker staff. Picker staff is you walk down the arena stairs and you lean over and you pick what people have dropped in that public space. So we picked the next Sunday to do that. On Thursday of that week, President Obama called. The White House called and says, the president and his daughter would like to go to that game. Would you host them? I said, of course. So the president comes. I escort him to his seats. He says, please sit down. Now I have 3 hours next to the President of the United States. ESPN cuts in the live programming, sitting president at a WNBA game with owner Ted Leonsis. It's everywhere. I'm talking to the president. He says, you're the son of a Greek immigrant. I bet you growing up your mom or dad wanted you to be president of the United States. I said, yeah, that's kind of the American dream. He says, well, when I was growing up, I always wanted to own an NBA team. We have a great time. He leaves. I'm on cloud 9. It's, I got to go clean the women's bathroom, which I did. I worked on the picking staff. It's a year later. Not a single one of my employees ever mentions that President Obama was at the arena and I sat with them, but they all talk about the empathy that was shown and the role modeling that happened and how much happier the employee base was that you could admit a mistake and show empathy and learn what their jobs were all about. Fourth, that you get out of the I and into the we, and you volunteer and give back, and that you're in service to something other than your own accumulation, your own day-to-day. Companies that give back are enormously successful. Individuals that give back, enormously happy, puts things in perspective. It also connects you to the communities that you're serving. It also activates, in a much more creative vein, your self-expression. And lastly, that you're in pursuit of a higher calling. It seems fairly obvious, but it isn't. During the good days of AOL, there was a 10-year decade of the 90s, where AOL built the most value of any company on Wall Street. We went public at a $400 million valuation, and we peaked at a $160 billion valuation. When we managed for Main Street, and we had a higher calling of bringing technology and communications to level the playing field, increase the opportunities for education. We predicted that the internet would create, put the power in the hands of students and young adults and would activate something like the Arab Spring or whatever we want to call it. When we had that higher calling, the company did great. We had a mission. When we acquired Time Warner and our mission became $11 billion of EBITDA, the company cratered. That was a deep lesson to me. I don't want my team to win the Stanley Cup. I don't want us just to sell a lot of tickets. I want to bring our city closer together. I want to create lifelong memories between fathers and sons and mothers and daughters. I want immortality for our players. I want lifelong memories that bind our community together. So finding the higher calling in everything that you do, showing service to others, having high levels of empathy, self-expressing, and being an active member of communities of interest. Now, I'm still, to this day, not actively religious. I have high spirit, but I'm not a church-going, organized religion member. It's interesting in my research, the group that has the highest success rate economically, the lowest rates of suicide and depression, the lowest rates of divorce are evangelical Christians. They score the highest on every one of those tenets on the matrix. So there's something really important here about thinking that happiness leads to success and that success doesn't create happiness. That's what I think the Georgetown new campaign and program is all about. We have this rare opportunity as a community to elevate Georgetown to its rightful place, one that is very reflective of the collective of all of the alums, all of the professors, all of the students that are in the community today. It's really an honor to be on the board of the university. We're going to make this program really, really successful. We're going to make you all proud, and I hope you'll all be happy with the rest of the weekend. Thank you.